If you're living in Sydney, Melbourne, or Brisbane, and you can't afford to buy that home in the location that you really want, and you're like, I'm never going to be able to afford it. Like, it's a really distasteful, discouraging, and disappointing feeling. You can't buy the home that you know that you and your family want, you deserve, you desire. What should you do? All right. Like, I've been in that position. And in this episode, I want to tell you about rent vesting. I'm going to share this strategy that I've actually personally done. So this is not like theory. I'm talking from practical experience. Also, having achieved or helped dozens of clients achieve the outcomes of rent vesting and tell you whether it's right for you or not. So, should you buy or should you rent? Should you buy your home, even if it's not really the one that you want because you can't afford that one? Or should you rent and invest at the same time in the hope that you will be able to buy your dream home one day? Let's go through the pros and cons of rent vesting, and at the end of the episode, I'll tell you stuff that basically no one else tells you because they're trying to push a narrative or a strategy down your throat. I'll actually tell you some of the exceptions which really make rent vesting not a viable strategy for some people. But for the vast majority of people, it still makes a ton of sense like it did for me.
Welcome to the Oz Property Investment Mastery Podcast. My name's PK and I help busy people build passive income by buying top 5% growth and cash flow property and build a portfolio using data without wasting months doing research, spending weekends at inspection or catching flights, or dropping $10,000 to $20,000 on buyer's agents every single time. So if you're confused, lack confidence, and just overwhelmed with all the information and marketing misinformation available online and don't know where to start, then this show is for you.
So let's go through the pros of buying to live versus the pros of renting and investing somewhere else. Let's start off with buying your home, the cons to start with. So let's say you're in Sydney or Melbourne and you want to buy your own home, and you do in fact buy your home. Your first con or the first downside is that things are so expensive in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, even Brisbane these days. I mean, they're actually on average more expensive, including houses and units, than Melbourne. So gone are the days when only Sydney, Melbourne is expensive. All over the East Coast, three big cities are really expensive. So if you do buy your home, you're going to be stuck in a 30-year prison. You're going to be stuck in a 30-year mortgage prison, and you won't be able to do anything else because all of your savings on a monthly basis, all of your serviceability, everything will be soaked up into getting that house and trying to pay it off. And it may not even be the house that you really love, your ultimate, your forever, your dream home, because you couldn't afford that. So that prison is really shackling you from a investing and from a growing wealth perspective. That's number one. Number two is because, once again, in these two or three big cities, houses are so expensive, you've basically soaked up all of your borrowing capacity, all of your serviceability into buying that one principal place of residence. Okay, especially with rates the way they are these days, the banks aren't lending you as much money for principal place of residence houses because they don't generate any rent, any income. So you've bought this place, you can't borrow anything else from the bank, and it's not even the best place. You're not even like really enjoying it, and you're not creating wealth. So, I mean, that's certainly another con if you fall into that category. Number three is it's not your dream home. You couldn't afford your dream home. You've settled for second or third best. The dream home is now almost impossible as soon as you've settled for second or third best. A lot of people are like, well, no, at least I'm on the ladder, right? At least I've got my first home. That's a good thing. Property ownership is good. And then after 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, I can upgrade. But let me ask you this. Yes, the value of your home, your principal place, is in fact rising, even though you settled for second or third best. But so is the price of that ultimate dream home, so is the price of the real prized location that you want to be buying in. So, from that perspective, you have to ask yourself, is that principal place of residence that I bought really rising in value? Yes, in nominal terms it is, but relative to where you ultimately want to be buying, it may not be rising. They may both be rising at the same pace, or even worse, where you really want to be buying may be rising faster. So, unless you have a really, really high paying job or business, where you can actually start to bridge that gap through savings on a monthly, quarterly, yearly basis, actually the flipping of your first principal place of residence isn't going to get you any closer to your dream home. Hopefully this concept is clear. I know a lot of people convince themselves accidentally, innocently, that getting on the property ladder is going to get you closer to your principal place of residence. That's your dream home. I mean, that may be better than not doing anything at all, but really, if both things are rising at the same pace, it's not really getting you that closer. And number 4, the 4th downside of buying your not dream home, right, rather than, rent vesting, you've just gone and settled for 2nd or 3rd best, is you got no money left, all right? You've put all your serviceability, all your funds, your capital into this home that you may or may not like, and now you got nothing left. You got nothing left for emergency, perhaps. You got nothing less left to invest from a savings perspective. You're just all in on this one place that you were really just tolerating, right? Because you knew you couldn't afford where you really wanted to live. So those are the downsides of buying your first principal place of residence rather than rent vesting. Of course, the upside is stability. It's at your own place, so you're not going to have to move if you don't want to every year or 2 years or 3 years from one rental place to another. So that's very much an advantage from an emotional, sentimental perspective. And, I'm a firm believer that the sleep at night factor is a very important part of the equation. Not everything is about, cold, hard numbers. So that's definitely something to consider. Now let's flip over and talk about the pros of rent vesting. This is where you've said, no, I'm not going to settle for second best. I'm going to, rather than buy my principal place of residence, actually use my capital, use my borrowing capacity to buy investment properties elsewhere, interstate, let's say, and use that wealth generation to be able, number one, to buy my dream home where I want, and number two, to fast track the path to be able to buy my dream home, to get it in the first place, and to get it faster. Both things need to be there. So the pro number one upside of rent vesting is flexibility. All right. So you've bought, let's say, 2, 3 investment properties elsewhere, less in value, cheaper in value than your dream home or principal place of residence that you would have ought to otherwise have ought to bought. Um, so that you've got flexibility. You can sell them if you want to, if something goes wrong in your finances. And at the same time, you've got flexibility to move around. Perhaps your children go to one primary school and the high school around the area is not that flash. You can move rental places to another suburb, right? You've got that flexibility in terms of school choices. Maybe your job is quite nomadic or mobile. You can move around from location to location year on year around the same city or other cities in Australia, and at the same time be building wealth. So that flexibility is a very important piece. Number 2 is serviceability. Yes, in the first option where we're buying our not ideal principal place of residence, you've maxed out your serviceability and you've kind of locked yourself in. Sure, it's a similar situation. You might have locked yourself in by buying $1 million home that you didn't really love in Sydney, and instead you've chose to rent vest and bought, let's say 350 or $400,000 homes. I understand the math doesn't add up, but banks lend you more for investment properties because they provide income. So you've still maxed out your serviceability, but in the latter, when you're rent vesting, that serviceability is actually building wealth because you've bought multiple assets. All right, you're able to hold a portfolio that is larger than had you just bought one second rate principal place of residence. And that serviceability is actually building your wealth because you've bought multiple assets. You've got 3 houses. So when 3 houses grow, you've got more growth than versus if you just had one house grow, especially because the value of those 3 houses combined is larger than the one house that would have been your principal place of residence. Because, like I said, banks allow you to borrow more money when buying investment properties. Plus, if you invest correctly interstate or elsewhere, then those houses will be generating cash flow because, once again, they're rental properties, they're providing rental income that is adding to your wealth provided you do this correctly. And of course, easier said than done, right? But I want to demonstrate what's possible. And so in both cases, serviceability is maxed out. Well, you don't have to max out your serviceability in rent investing if you don't want to, but to maximize your future wealth, you should be or you could be maxing out your serviceability, provided you've got all the cash flow to allow it and cash buffers in place, but you're actually building wealth for yourself rather than a trap, which could be the case if you just buy a second-rate principal place of residence. That's the second upside. Third upside in terms of rent vesting is that now you're not actually having to pay so much in a mortgage for your second rate principal place of residence because you can find locations where you like to live, but the rent is actually cheaper than your mortgage repayments. So you can live in a lifestyle location where perhaps you could never have afforded to buy it, but you can afford the rent there. The rent on a monthly basis is cheaper. And I fully understand we're in a massive housing shortage. Rents aren't what they used to be 3 years ago, but still, there's scores of locations with interest rates so high where it's cheaper to rent than it is to buy. So if you locate one of these areas where the lifestyle is also really, really good because the yields on property is low, rents are low, property prices are high, then you can get arbitrage. It actually helps your monthly, yearly budget. You're enjoying the location, the amenities, the lifestyle of that particular suburban property, and not having to pay so much for the privilege to live in it. And that's called renting, where it's cheaper to rent versus buy it. And then the fourth upside, and of course, this is the main thing, is when you're rent vesting, you can keep these investment properties 2, 3, 4, 5, however many it is, diversify around Australia. And in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, 15 years' time, depending on how audacious your principal place of residence dream home needs or wants to be, how much aspiration you have in your personal finances, of course, you can sell part of that portfolio. It would have gone up in value provided you followed data and use the cash profits. I understand there's capital gains tax, but you get that 50% discount. Use those cash profits to be able to buy the principal place of residence that you could have no way afforded otherwise. You may decide to sell all your properties, right? All your investment properties. Let's say after 7 years, I'm just making this up, they'd all double in value. You've just made millions of dollars. And once again, that's a hyperbole. It might be millions of dollars. It might just be $1 million. It might just be $800,000. But you've made more than you otherwise would have. Okay. And now you can buy your principal place of residence. That's your dream home. And of course, this only works if you're buying multiple investment properties. If you just buy one investment property that would have just grown at the same rate as your principal place of residence that you didn't buy, then it doesn't really make sense. You might as well just jump in and buy that principal place of residence because both of them are going to rise, right? You need to buy multiple investment properties, but that's possible because the yield allows or enables the cash flow perspective from a household budgeting perspective, and banks allow you to borrow more and you can diversify across Australia. That's what it's not a new strategy, it's not my strategy, it's not something I've cooked up. Literally thousands of people in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane have bought their dream home, including my clients, by deploying or employing this strategy. It really works. The exception, though, all right, the exception, I promise you, I wouldn't just be all roses in this episode. The exception is where you can already buy your dream home or dream home location is rising faster than where the investment properties would be. If you know that that dream home location, you're just about to get it. You can't afford it now, but your business income, your household, your salary income means that you can just about reach it in 4 years. And that location is rising faster than all these other areas that you would invest interstate. Then just go for it, because why delay something you can get soon? In that area or that situation, I would just go for it, because buying elsewhere interstate, sure, they will rise too, but it'll be a zero-sum game ultimately, because where you want to buy is rising faster. So if you know where it's rising faster, that's where your dream home is, just go and buy now. Hopefully that helps. Hopefully that's educated you. I wanted to give you both sides of the equation, because oftentimes property commentators, property quote unquote experts, buyer's agents, which I am not, they just tell you all the good things about rent vesting. But I think in many, many situations, circumstances, especially if you're in Sydney, it doesn't work. In Melbourne, it doesn't work. But at the same time, 95% plus times, it does in fact work. Now, if you're on a huge income, you actually just need to knuckle down, have some austerity and discipline in your budget, and in 3 years' time, you'll be able to buy that dream home, $2-3 million home. All right. In that case, rent vesting may not be suitable for you, because this really is a delayed gratification strategy. You really need to give it at least 5 years, 7 years, if not longer, for it to bear fruit. You need to have patience and determination over the long run to get that dream home through rent vesting. But if you can just sniff it, if you can smell it, if you can just grasp it within a few years anyway, you just need to save up, then rent vesting is not for you. And I don't think enough people say that. I rent vested myself for almost a decade. That's how we bought our home on the waterfront in the Gold Coast. I'm not special. In fact, I don't think I'm much at all. I think you guys can do a much better job at it than I can. I know my clients, so many of them have achieved their dream home much quicker than I was able to for my wife and myself. So go off, learn more, and make sure you understand the data, because these principles, high level strategies, they all make a whole bunch of sense, right? But you really don't know what you don't know unless you learn the data, unless you learn how to, form a strategy, lending strategy, portfolio strategy, yield strategy, frequency of buying strategy, budget strategy. Unless you understand how to model this over the long term in a model, and then bring it back to understand the next steps congruent and concomitant with your individual risk appetite, finances, then this is all just wishful thinking. It's like a dream, and you'll watch or listen to this episode, be like, oh, that was nice, but I don't really know how to actually implement it. You need to actually get into the nitty gritty. This whole strategy, there's not a single professional in Australia that will hold your hand through it and do it for you. Advanced property investing really requires you to get educated and become the master of your own destiny. No one cares about your money as much as you do. And that's why I always recommend to, first of all, invest in the 6 inches between your two ears, because that real estate is more valuable than any principal place of residence, than any number of investment properties. Sharpen that axe before you start to cut down the tree. And to do that, I'll leave links below. Facebook group with more than 50,000 people, Australian Property Mastery PK. There are literally hundreds of people in there that have employed this strategy. So it's, you can take it from the ephemeral to the practical by interacting, engaging, and learning from them. Some of them much more successful than myself. So really invest in yourself. Invest in yourself again and again and again, because no one is going to invest or care about you as much as you. Thank you for watching or listening. Let me know if there's any points that I've missed, and please take action. My name is PK. Thank you so much, guys.